I guess we get a beeping piece here. So my name's Joe Rickard. I am the crop protection product manager for Winfield United. So I cover the whole eastern business units that we have, so 2 business units. So everything from Illinois to Maine and from Lake Erie to the Mason-Dixon line is pretty much my area. I grew up small dairy farm in northeast Ohio, and that's where I currently live still with my wife and children right now still. So you guys are at the high yield corn management stop, and I should have put marked in profitable high yield management here after Preston's talk here itself that we talk about here. So a couple pieces that I kind of want to lead into here for today, and it may be more elementary, rudimentary for a lot of you guys that you're already doing a lot of these basic things right now. But as we go forward and you think about any guys who have taken a college class, you can't really jump into the 400 level class, right? You'd be way over your head. You got to take those 100s, 200s, 300 level classes before you can get up there. Those prereq classes, similar to what we've got here. I've got the guys holding the foam boards up here now. We had a little problem with the wind the last group here itself. But when I think about these prerequisites, pH, fertility, getting that all in line. And when I think about these things and talk about them here itself, and we'll get down to the green part on limitations, but really linking together with all the guys in the blue shirts from Superior, how do you guys work together in doing a lot of this stuff? So when we think about pH, fertility, keeping that in line, that's pretty much table stakes, right? There are P&K levels, what we need them to be here, fall applications. We'll get into some of the operational piece. 2 is weed control. Maybe you guys might not have seen it, but I can guarantee you the guys in the dark blue that are here today, any of you guys having issues getting any chemistry or herbicides here this year? Usually get a laugh at that one here with some allocation problems, right? At least from the blue guys. So we take a look here now as how was weed control this year? And kind of it'll go down to our limitations piece. Good, bad?
It's going to get worse.
It's going to get worse this year?
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
We were so dry and stuff in June. I think we had a lot of chemical kind of ran out early. Now we're getting wet and a little cooler. That going to get a lot of late.
Recharging some weeds, right? Later in the season. Okay, that's a fair assessment. The last piece that I look at, and I take a look and I kind of anecdotally, and I'd ask the group here, over the last 5 to 8 years, I've seen a lot of plastic go in the ground. Do you guys agree with that? Maybe even some on your farms addressing this issue. And we look at the drainage pieces, you know, hey, we were maybe hot and dry to your point here earlier, but getting that excess water away from that crop faster so those roots aren't waterlogged at the end of the day. Okay. So again, you guys knew this, probably just revisiting, you know, basic blocking and tackling as we go through. But coming down here, I kind of put it, and I'll refer back to this sheet, and you guys are more than happy to take a picture of that, look at it. It's just some different products that we offer at Winfield put together with different stages. But looking at some limitations, when we think about high yield corn, and a couple pieces, plant physiology is my background here, but when I say plant physiology, what's that mean to you guys? How the plant is growing, right? What's going on internally within that corn crop? Let's take a look at a picture up here. And I'm going to look right here around this time frame, that V4 to V6 time frame. So we're roughly shin high. What's going on internally within that corn plant right now? Say it again.
Set rows around.
Set rows around. That's exactly right. At that early stage right here, we get to this time frame, it's already determined. Is it going to be 16? Is it going to be 18? Is it going to be 20 around? That early stage. We think about plant physiology, and these are just 2 components that I think about right here at this V10 to V12 time frame. What's going on internally within the corn plant at that time frame? It's when we're starting to determine our length. How many kernels long are we going to end up and put on there at that time frame? Okay. As we look at, I marked environment down here. So you mentioned you were hot and dry early. And I know it's kind of where you go or as the crow flies here, where a lot of you guys hot and dry early and now you get moisture late, or vice versa, or you've been hot and dry all year. What do you think about that? How the plant is growing, right? What's going on internally within that corn plant at that time frame? What's going on internally within the corn plant at that time frame? No, see some head shaking here itself.
Had a really dry June.
Really dry June. Caught some moisture maybe here later this month, or
Kind of the middle of July, started getting wet again.
right around pollination, right? To help with that pollination piece. When I think about the environment, does that influence what type of products you guys might be using? So you think about products like, hey, it was hot and dry maybe around when we were going to do this this application time frame when we're going to come back in here. Maybe I'm not going to throw that extra micro in. Maybe I am. Thinking about those. I will tell you from the, what's the new kind of ever pioneering piece that you hear a lot about now, a lot of hot buzzwords about what type of product line? Hear this term biologicals here in a lot of the yield magazines, things like that. I will tell you the environment will play a very, very important piece into what products, what biologicals, biostimulants, plant growth regulators that you will use going into the future. If you guys have used some of these already, you may have had a rep come up to you and say, well, that didn't work, that product didn't work because it was hot and dry. Or that product didn't work because it was too wet. So some of those things are kind of pigeonholing some of these products a little bit easier. This third point, this operational piece, this is where you guys as operators and Superior, the co-op itself, really, really mesh together itself. When you think about these 2 points, and we kind of lead into these next 6 points here of kind of subcategories, do you guys have equipment that you can do all your pre-plant fertility up front, or do you rely on Superior to do or help with a lot of that information? We go back to our point right up here, right? pH, is that liming, fertility, P and K. You know, that's a great place for them to help in. We jump to planting, and you think about up here, it's kind of we look at some different options, and we refer back to this chart. But how many of you guys, by show of hands, how many of you guys get in-furrow capabilities on your planter? Okay, how about 2x2 on there? Okay, so a few more hands go up. All of these things go into limitations as far as when you talk with your guys at Superior. Well, we can't do that because we don't have in-furrow capabilities. So how do we get around that? What are different directions? Kind of key takeaway points that you look at. We look at early post. How many of you guys make kind of two different chemistry applications? You're applying a herbicide and maybe a micronutrient all in the same tank mix. Or maybe it's a herbicide and a micronutrient and maybe an early season fungicide within that time frame, right? Different tank mixes that you can look at. A couple here in these last three that I'm really going to dive in, and once we go through them, is the late post time frame. So this feeds back in to the physiology component. Late post, when I say that's V10, V12, maybe V14 time frame. I look at the difference here now as we go to VT R1, so that tassel time frame. Usually throwing a tassel, starting to silk out, roughly what, third week of July here. A couple weeks ago, you're really full tassel on a lot of stuff, what we see by the calendar. And then one other piece here at the end that these two that we'll hit on is R3 plus. So thinking about, well, what the heck is R3? Take a look here from 6 different reproductive stages in corn. Anybody tell me what they are? So we've got tassel R1, silking, right? R2 is going to be blister. R3, milk. R4, dough. R5, dent. And what's R6 up here? Commonly called black layer, right? Physiological maturity. So I pulled this ear out of this one block up here. Anybody have an idea of what stage this might be as we went through? We can kind of already rule some things out, right? It's not at black layer right now, is it? Not close yet, right? So we can kind of rule that one out. You got a 20% chance of getting it right here on what we're looking at. What would you guys say this is at here now? R3? Somebody said R3? R4? I'd say we're right around late R2, R3 time frame. And the reason I say that is when you go up and you're looking at a lot of these kernels, you start to poke that, you see a lot of milk coming out of that. You can crack them in half, start to look when you get closer to R4, that dough will start to form. You can start to put up those different lights and kind of see where that milk line is going to be and how far along you are within that stage itself. As we kind of go back here, there's two pieces that I really want to look at. This late post and this R3 plus time frame. How many of you guys make applications here or make a planned application? Go back to Jason's point as far as the planning piece and Preston's talk here. How many of you guys make a planned V10, V12 application? Got one? A lot fewer hands go up though when we look at that. I look at the analogy from what we do from early post to late post here, or almost tassel time frame. Somebody told me it's like taking your kids to school when they're in 3rd grade at that early post time frame and not picking them back up until they're getting ready to graduate high school. When you think about that time from 3rd grade to graduating high school, how much have they learned? How much have they grown within that time frame? Quite a bit, right? And you think about the corn crop itself, where we're at on from V3, V4, V5, V6, this time frame to V10. So as we take a look at that late post, right here, around that time frame. Some key takeaways, as Todd mentioned on here, as you guys kind of pull up your notes, is what are some different options? You guys mentioned that a couple of guys raised their hand. What are some things that you can do in this time frame to really help or gain more high yield? Fungicide application. That's one area that's really kind of common. We take a look here. I'm going to add in, so we take a look at the R3 time frame. So I'm going to put that application right here. Right? I'll ask, if you're planning on this V10, are you planning on coming back with another one here around this time? That would be more than probably the way that I would guide you to go. What's the big disease that we've all heard about from some of the land-grant universities? Tar spot, right? I can tell you that I've walked quite a few fields last year in northwest Ohio, where it was sprayed and where it was not, 60, 80, 100 bushel yield loss. It's the real deal. You guys are in an area here in the southern corn belt that you really know and you fight southern rust, right? So you know what that disease can do. This is kind of southern rust big bad brother, is how I kind of put it. It will mess some things up pretty quick, fast, and in a hurry. When we look at late post, a lot of the data that we analyze here, you'll see Randy Meddy, my counterpart on the seed side, talking about cropland seed, and we look at it through our answer plot system. We see a lot of these hybrids, and whether you're planting cropland, DeKalb, Pioneer, whatever it may be, are huge users of nitrogen later in the life cycle. When you get to this V12, V10 time frame, we're only about 50% uptake on nitrogen. And you think about, okay, we're VT left, what do we have coming on? We've got this guy right here, right? We got grain fill we got to figure out. So as you think about things as far as maybe we've done our first side dress or top dress, how do we split that up? I'm not asking you to put more on, but maybe we divide it up and we put maybe a different ration on what we're looking at there later in season. High boy rigs, Y drop applications, plain if it's able to in some geographies to get on. Multiple different ways that we can look at. So those two pieces from a takeaway from yield enhancement, we take a look at the R3 time frame. If you guys are planning on doing a fungicide here, I would tell you to make the plan on making a fungicide application here as tar spot starts to get closer and becomes more prevalent in the countryside. We're doing a lot of tests actually this year. We've actually got a tar spot protocol out there that myself and another product manager is running. We take a look, and I'll ask you here if you'll be kind. What fungicide did you use by chance here, V10? You don't know? Okay, that's fine. We look at, do we use a premium product, like maybe a Delaro Complete, a Triva Pro, a Veltima? And then come back, and again, more about return on investment. Do we look at using maybe a Rust Ease, a Protogam Yield, a Stratego Yield, maybe a mid-tier fungicide? Or do we flip-flop that and we use the mid-tier up front and we use maybe the premium or high treatment in the back? Those are some things that we haven't got all ironed out yet that we're looking at here for this year. But I can tell you kind of speculation of what I've seen so far in the plots looking at it. I'm going to be more apt if tar spot's my issue. I'm going to want to pull the big gun out first, that Veltima Delaro Complete. I'm going to want to pull that guy first and then use my Strobe or Rust Ease or Protogam or Stratego Yield, that mid-tier product on the backside. But for you guys who are in southern rust country, I'm thinking I want to flip-flop that. And why do you say that, getting that on early, that mid-tier? What happens here late season right now? You see some hurricanes starting around the Gulf. Maybe some southern rust might be coming to you guys here. And I said we're at R3, R2, R3 right now. We've still got an opportunity, if you wanted to do it, again, physiologically, grain fill time frame, to put something in there, in the tank, and make an application. And I know whenever we go through and we talk about, and some of the sellers here, you guys, the guys in the blue around here will talk, well, you need to add Master Lock to that mix. When you think about this corn crop, how much biomass is right here, why would we want to continue to add Master Lock to any of those fungicide applications? Really 3 reasons. You think we got some wind here, drift, deposition. So we want to get it through the canopy. The third D is depth. How far down can we get that fungicide? That's what Master Lock helps with. As we think about, are all the diseases going to be up top or in the middle, down below? Depending what the disease is, if it's soil-borne, going to splash up maybe, that's where the Master Lock comes in to help create that fungicide to get it down deeper into that canopy and more deposition.
How would you change that with Xyway?
So Xyway piece, as we look at, you'd look at that piece as far as that's going to be a 2x2 application. So as
how would you change your later? Like, would you just do the R3?
So if you
after you did
so if you take a look at this, I'll walk through this, see if this is where you're headed. You'll see an in-furrow fungicide here, and that's where Xyway would go. I will tell you, if you guys run into crown rot or some other pieces, Bayer doesn't really actively promote this, but they do have a label for it, and I've had really good luck with Proline in furrow at 4.5 ounces. So Xyway there. So what, to your point, as far as what's my next application or what should I be looking at there as we look? I almost call this kind of a fungicide relay. So we start here at planting, kind of a stress window. That can take us clear up to here to keep us clean, depending on our disease load that we've got. If we have a high disease year, we may be back down to V8 or so. And we may have to look to see what's the anthracnose like? What are some other stalk rot diseases or leaf diseases that we have out there? We may have to pull that trigger here itself, depending on the disease year. And I mean, no 2 years are alike, right? As we take a look at what we saw last year in through the Corn Belt, a lot more disease going through the Corn Belt last year, starting roughly end of June, all through July. I haven't seen a whole lot of a disease pressure per se, or as massive of disease pressure as what I saw last year, just because, going back to the environment that we have, did we have something conducive? It's all up to you as far as how your operation runs. Is that something, you know, we looked at this V5 to V8 time frame. You can look at those. I think we're pulling the trigger a little too early, in my opinion. We have very, very small biomass. not a whole lot of disease pressure, and we're hoping that those in-furrow fungicides are going to hold us to that time frame, roughly 2 weeks, 21 days, depending on what you're looking at for activity. Here's where, as far as that second or relay piece of the fungicide coming in at V10 to V12, and then if we do have higher disease pressure, like right now, if we get something tar spot, southern rust, and you guys' end of the world that comes in, we've got another option that we can pull the trigger on another application. So that relay time frame of roughly, if you do use Xyway in furrow, roughly you got 3 fungicide application timings on if you're going to do V10 and V10, V12 to R3 time frame.
Is Master Lock just like Interlock?
Is Master Lock just like Interlock? Master Lock contains Interlock plus an additional surfactant. And that surfactant is where we get that additional depth and deposition in through there. We looked and we developed Master Lock here quite a few years ago, but specifically for aerial and fungicide application was the main target point that we see with that product. How I kind of define Interlock, Master Lock, Power Lock, or the lock family itself. You can throw Strike Lock in there too if you wanted to. Interlock is just the all-around drift and deposition agent. If I've got something, weeds, herbicides, insecticides that I want to control for the bulk of the acres that are running through the custom rigs for the guys here, Interlock's a great choice. 4 ounces to the acre, great job. If I'm targeting fungicide applications here, and especially through a chopper, a plane, the new addition to drones itself, that's where I'm going to target the Master Lock product into that piece. I know we're coming up on time here. We got 3 minutes left. I want to open it up because, again, this day is for you guys. How do we mesh things together from the Superior piece to here, now with products, agronomic knowledge? What questions do you guys have for your operation that you're looking at? This is the interactive part, guys. Yes, sir.
I just had a question about that tar spot. I heard a lot about it up in Ohio. Those big yield losses. Like, how late did that set in to knock off 80 bushels? You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
How
So
much time did it take to do that?
So it reacts very, very quickly, and you can get it in these reproductive time frames, R2, R3, R4, all the way up to R5 before its maturity, and it's just a life-sucking source that you look at, very, very easy to ID. If you were thinking about dipping a paintbrush in a jug of black paint, dip that paintbrush and just throw it right on the crop. That's literally what it looks like, speckled all over the place. And it just completely deteriorates that photosynthetic ability for that crop, for corn, and that's where the yield robbing just takes effect. And it cannot fill that ear without any green material biomass there. The piece to really watch out for, and why we really saw it last year, was a lot of the free moisture on the leaves. And this is one thing that people don't talk about, but it's real, and we really don't have any control over it, but that's the one piece of scouting that you want to watch out for. If you have a lot of foggy days, foggy mornings, where fog lays in this corn crop till 10, 11 o'clock in the morning before it's burned off, those are prime fields, bottom ground, where that fog really lays. That's where you want to be very, very cognizant about scouting on those fields for tar spot. Great question. Yes, sir.
Is there any blight on the way? Any southern leaf blight? Is there anything like that showing up yet? Don't look like it.
There is some tar spot that was spotted around here. There's a website through the IPM that you can kind of keep track of self-reporting of where it's been found. I did see a report that there is kind of a hurricane brewing down in the Gulf right now, I believe, or it's about ready to come ashore close within the next couple days or week here itself. That usually when we have those type of weather events, that type of heavy moisture that comes ashore, that's usually when it grabs on from Texas and kind of brings it right up that jet stream there. So again, that would be the watch out for this area as far as the southern rust piece. Blight so much, I haven't heard anything early season with it being wet in some areas and then turning dry and vice versa. I did see some seedling blights, but other than that, here later season, the watchouts there would be what we've got. So, yes, sir.
Does southern rust work on the same order as tar spot? It shuts off the photosynthesis.
Yeah, what you'll see is exactly right. You'll get these kind of that rust look that's all over there. Kind of that saprophytic piece is just eating that photosynthetic ability that you've got there.
So if you were at Dent, would you still spray for tar spot then?
I would look there as far as, the question is, if I was at Dent, would I still spray? So that R5 time frame. I'd really look to see, do I have that shield, or what I call that black layer, kind of that shield. Once I've got that black layer piece on, right, nothing's getting in, nothing's getting out. It'd be watching there as far as pulling it apart, holding, where's that milk line at? Do I have still quite a bit of dough that needs to fill on that milk even though I'm at Dent there? That would be one thing that I kind of evaluate probably on a field by field basis that I'd look at. Yes, sir.
What about test weight?
As far as
You know,
kind of,
if it's black layer and you get it real bad, won't it affect the test weight?
it can, as far as, you know, how much that dough is in there is kind of, when we pack those things in there, packed all those no carbohydrates in there, how will that, it's kind of like you refer to diplodia. You know, you think about that ear rot there itself, that kind of the sponging piece, is really, really effective test weight, right? So what we've seen more with the tar spot is when it ends up and gets on there, it just doesn't fill that ear at all because it has no material, no photosynthetic ability to move those sugars, nutrients into that ear itself.
How does tar spot overwinter from year to year versus onset? And think, you know, if you don't take it, is it something where you got to stay on top of it and spray it just so you don't create a higher level for the following years? Or?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the question was, how does tar spot overwinter? So when you think about one, it does overwinter. When you think about comparing it to, I told you it's kind of big, tar spot is southern rust, big bad brother. Does southern rust overwinter here? No, right? It doesn't overwinter. That's why we don't see it unless we have some weather events that come up. Tar spot will overwinter up here, and it's spread aerially by spores that you look at. So when you take a look, say this field over here is yours and this field's here is mine. Well, I'm going to end up, and we both had tar spot, and I'm going to bury all my residue, all those spores, bury them. Even though I've buried them, it's still spread wind aerially. You're a no-till farmer, just is for theoretic purposes. We get weather events, and now the way the jet stream was, or the way the wind blows those spores into my field. So tillage is what we've kind of found out, more to come on a lot, but it's not a viable option as we go to kind of control it there. So it's a watching, more scouting piece is what we're gonna have to look at.